Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. Here on American Voices, we celebrate all that this country has to offer. So after hearing about people who do wonderful things and people's life stories, we also want to celebrate the land. So each week we invite authors to talk about a favorite place or sound in America. This time, Jared Cohen is back. He's the founder and CEO of Jigsaw at Alphabet. He's the author of many books, including Accidental Presidents, 8 Men Who Changed America. Here's Jared Cohen.
I'm Jared Cohen, and my favorite place in America is the Franklin Roosevelt childhood home up at Hyde Park in the Hudson Valley in New York. It's like being transplanted back into history because the Hudson Valley is where the great Gilded Age families had their homes that they went to in the fall, but the Roosevelts lived there year round. And when you go there, you see the ups and downs of Franklin Roosevelt's career. You see, somebody born with a silver spoon in their mouth, filled with ambition, but you also see the long straightaway when he found out he had polio and he had to spend 7 years trying to get from the beginning of the driveway to the end of the driveway. And you imagine him struggling, with his leg braces and his crutches. And so seeing the rise and fall and rise again of one of America's great figures, it all exists in that home in this one little town up in the Hudson Valley. It's an estate. It's not a sprawling estate like the Vanderbilt Mansion or the Astor Mansion or some of the other great ones, but it's a decent size house. It has the charm of a Gilded Age mansion, but it's not a monstrosity. It has these beautiful gardens, and you go there and you imagine little FDR wandering around, and then you imagine grown-up FDR wheeling around. And he entertained some of the great figures in history in that same home. So when he died, Eleanor Roosevelt, who used to write letters to Harry Truman, kind of trying to represent the ghost of the late FDR, actually suggested to Truman that their home in Hyde Park be the headquarters of the new United Nations. I first went there probably as a teenager. I don't have a huge memory of it other than getting to see FDR's wheelchair and getting to see his childhood bedroom. Now when I go there, I love seeing the library. I love seeing the piano. I love seeing the office. Every time I go there, and I go there often because I love it and I do a lot of work with the FDR library, I always ask if I can sit in his desk chair, and I always am told no. I know it's very sad. Or I just need to do it when nobody's looking. I get over there every couple of months. In my lifetime, I'll never see the invention of a time machine. So the closest I can get to experiencing a time machine is to go to a place like Roosevelt's childhood home, or really any of the presidential homes. But Roosevelt's in particular, just because he was this iconic figure, going to his child home feels like you're being transplanted back in history. And, people engage with historic objects and historic places in very different ways. For me, my imagination runs wild. So when I'm at Hyde Park and I'm at the Roosevelt home, I literally see little Roosevelt walking around, or I see President Roosevelt, entertaining, his war cabinet and entertaining foreign leaders. Roosevelt used to do a lot of informal entertaining in that home. Or when I, hold a presidential signed letter, I imagine what they must have been thinking when they signed it. So there's something about building a physical relationship with history that, for somebody who loves history, is a really special experience. As a kid growing up, I remember hearing about FDR and reading about FDR, and I remember always being struck by the Four Freedoms. And FDR has these iconic lines of nothing to fear but fear itself. And those are easy things to remember as a child. And I find this very interesting because, if you think about Disney characters, as a kid, you really relate to these Disney characters, and we assume that there's something special about Disney that makes us think about Mickey Mouse and Goofy. I liked Disney as a kid, but for me, I was much more captivated by presidential characters. And FDR, to me, always sort of stood tall among the lot. I think it's because my grandparents had such admiration for FDR. They were big Democrats. Both my grandfathers fought in World War II. I never got either of them to really talk about their experience in the war, but I did get them to talk about what they remembered of FDR. And I remember as a kid just asking them lots of questions about, what they thought of Roosevelt. And I just was captivated. He was a character that captivated me. My grandfather, who fought in the Pacific Theater, always thought that FDR, had saved his life, so he wasn't part of a 1 million-person invasion of Japan. And actually, George H.W. Bush told me the same thing when I interviewed him So I think, when my grandparents had such admiration for him and I grew up hearing stories about him and he was the first president that both my grandfathers remembered, I think it just kind of stuck with me. I have one grandfather who's still alive, but my 3 grandparents and the one who's still alive, I know them as old people. And talking about great figures from their childhood and their youth allow me to kind of imagine the youthful spirit that I never got to witness firsthand. My grandfather knows that I'm really curious about his experience in the war, and even at 95 years old, he's able to talk to me about what he remembers when he heard that FDR was dead. And like so many people of that generation, they didn't know anything other than FDR. He had basically been president their entire lives. I think it's harder at this age because he's slowed down a lot, but he knows I've been fascinated by history my entire life, and it's why I had always asked him so many questions. I need to physically be in a place like the Roosevelt home in Hyde Park to slow down, take a deep breath, reflect on the past, just allow myself to go at a different pace. And I always feel cleansed, like mentally cleansed when I leave there, very clear-minded when I leave there.
That was Jared Cohen. His most recent book is Accidental Presidents: 8 Men Who Changed America.
This is a day of national consecration, and I am certain that on this day, my fellow Americans expect that on my induction into the presidency, I will address them with a candor and a decision which the present situation of our people impels. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. We face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things. The withered leaves of industrial enterprise lie on every side. Farmers find no market for their produce, and the savings of many years in thousands of families are gone. More important, a host of unemployed citizens face the grim problem of existence, and an equally great number toil with little return. Only a foolish optimist can deny that God...
Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.